Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the CX Goalkeeper podcast. I am really pleased and I am thrilled to have a discussion with RON KAUFMAN. He accepted my invite. I am really glad that you accepted. Thank you very much, Ron, for being on my show.
It is a privilege to be on your show, Gregorio, and especially a privilege to meet and connect with all of your viewers and listeners around the world.
Thank you very much, Ron. It's really great, and this is the way I would like to kick off the year. This is my first interview in 2022. There is no best opportunity to start, and I want to mention that now that we are live, that you were one of my targets for this year, and I already achieved this target, and therefore one thing checked. I am super happy.
Okay. I'm not sure I love the idea of being somebody's target, but I will accept that I was a goal that you have achieved.
Exactly. That's the perfect definition. And we already, and also the audience is already getting some feelings about you. You are a professional guru in customer service. Everybody knows you. You have a great, outstanding book that was published several years ago. Everybody's reading that. I read that. Also, it was one of my first book that I read about customer experience. But
good.
Before we kick off, and then I come back to the story about your book, I would ask you please to quickly introduce you.
Well, my name is Ron KAUFMAN. I was born in the United States. I went to school in the US and in Europe. I studied international political history. And what I was really interested in is how countries come back together after war. I wasn't the person who wanted to know why war broke out or who won or lost the war, but how do they come back together to be the social community that we were before any of that conflict actually happened in the first place? I also got very involved with the sport that people might know of called Ultimate Frisbee. I was there when the sport was first created. The first rule of the game is called the spirit of the game. I was one of the people who took that sport out to colleges and then to countries all over the world. And so I'm in the Ultimate Frisbee Hall of Fame is what's called a Johnny Appleseed. In other words, somebody who takes it far and wide. Back in 1990, I moved to Singapore at the invitation of Singapore Airlines and the government of the country. They asked me to come for 1 week. At the end of the week, they said, could you please stay another week? Then they said, could you stay for a month? Would you stay for 6 months and run the project? And I got very involved in a project to raise the quality of service in the entire nation. And that gave me a tremendous deep dive, which has lasted now more than 3 decades, into the world of service, customer experience, building internal successful service cultures, differentiating based on service. And here we are, Gregorio, you and I having this conversation.
Thank you very much. And you didn't mention that all the possible awards that are available, you won them, or you are always on the top of these awards. I think you are, the 5th or the 6th time in a row, one of the number one guru in customer experience and in customer service. Congratulations for everything what you're doing. And also from my side, and also speaking also from my audience, thank you very much for what you are doing in this field. You are a role model for us.
Well, thank you. Let me just say that receiving awards is humbling, because to me it's just a moment that says what you're doing matters to other people. Now, we're going to give you this pat on the back. We're going to give you this recognition, but it comes with a condition. It's my own condition, which is do more. Give more, care more, contribute more, help more, support more, serve more. And, there's that thought about at the end of your life, how do you want to feel? And I remember I saw a cartoon once that said, all used up. And since I'm still here, I'm not all used up. So let's serve.
Thank you very much. And I think the audience and myself, we are already feeling how you are. But I think it's really important also. We speak often in companies, in businesses about values, core values.
Yes.
And I would like to understand which are the values that drive you in life.
Yeah, I have 6 core values, and they're connected in 3 couplets. So I'll share them with you. The first one is what I call gratitude and generosity. I recognize, and I couldn't stop being born as a male, as a white male. as a white American male, speaking English at a time between or after wars. So I didn't suffer that kind of thing. And I grew up in a middle-class family that allowed me access to tremendous education, and I don't take any of that for granted. I look at life itself and being alive at this moment with all of these extraordinary privileges. It makes no sense for me to apologize for them. What it makes sense for me to do is to say, how do I use these to be as generous as I possibly can in whatever ways that I can with whatever people that I can? So gratitude for life and generosity with all that has been given that I can give to others. That's number one. Number two is what I call curiosity and respect. So there was a time when I was in university and I went overseas, and it was just such a healthy moment to land in the UK after living in the United States for my first 20 years and realizing, oh, thank goodness there are other cultures out here. And it's not that I was disappointed with the US culture, but I began to flourish and realize that there are so many different cultures, ways of being, traditions, cuisines, spiritual, practices, et cetera, and that led me to embark on a life where these, what you see in front of the camera right now, are actually 3 of my many passports, which just gives you an idea of, what an extraordinary life I've been able to live, going around the world and being curious about how other people do things. How do they do family? How do they do birthdays? How do they do education? How do they do sports? How do they do life? And then be respectful of that. Not show up in anybody else's world like I know better or you should be like me. So curiosity and respect. And then the last 2 are what I call commitment and care. In other words, none of us is going to live any longer than we have the privilege and the miracle of being able to be alive. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I don't want to live my life thinking like, oh, I wish I had, or I'm sorry I wasted my time doing. I live with this sense of commitment to the well-being of other people. It's not like I'm only altruistic. I know that there's this incredible gift that somebody gets when they give to somebody else. And so I live with this sense of commitment and care for the well-being of others. Those are my 6 values.
Thank you very much. Outstanding. And if somebody goes to your webpage, ronkaufman.com, you will find out that there are 3 main words that are everywhere. It's service, it's care, and it's love. And I think now we would like to discuss about service and care. And I think
Sure.
on the long term, it will be not care anymore, but it will be love. The last thing that I want to share with the audience is, and please correct me if I'm saying something wrong, but your vision, your mission is the education for the well-being of humanity.
Correct.
It's I think this is outstanding. I was hoping that you would mention that. As you didn't say that, I wanted to share with the audience because I think this is a really important visions of people, not only focusing on profit and working, but on the well-being of the humanity. Because we have a great gift, as you said, that we are on this planet and we are here now during this period, and we need to do the best out of that.
And Gregorio, there's something that people may know about my background, or if you don't, let me tell you so you can enjoy it yourself. I had a grandma named Grandma B, and she taught kindergarten for 40 years. And when I was only 3 or 4 years old, because I was her grandchild, I got to go with her and watch her be the kindergarten teacher. And when you're teaching kindergarten children, you're not thinking about making money and what's my profit margin. What you're concerned for is encouraging and supporting and empowering and enabling and loving all of these crazy little kids that are running around. And so I really, got very early on that this idea of education for the well-being of other people. Yes, later on it may turn commercial, or it may turn like government or civil service or even military service. But what's the purpose of really teaching other people? To contribute to one another's well-being.
Thank you very much. It's really outstanding. And you already did one outstanding contribution. It's the book Uplifting Service, the proven path to delighting customer, colleagues, and everyone else you meet. And this is really the first book that I read about customer experience. Short story, I never shared that. It's I started working in customer experience, and I told my boss I want to prepare and he said, this is the book you need to read. Start with this book. And I'm really happy. And now from roughly 10 years after, I can discuss with you about your book. And therefore, I'm super pleased. And what I really like is it's not that you created the book and then you stopped, but you developed the concept of service again and again, and you are always reshuffling also the definition. Perhaps let's really start with the definition of service.
Sure.
How do you define service?
So when I started working in the world of service, I realized that there actually was not a good definition that everybody could agree on. I would hear things like the customer is always right, which isn't true. Or, the customer is king, but then what does that make the service provider? Or there's that horrible phrase that says, serve other people the way you would like to be served, which arrogantly assumes that other people should be like you. They're not. They're like them. So I ended up writing the definition that service is taking action to create value for someone else. So it could be action in making a sale, answering a question, providing a recommendation, doing an upgrade, whatever it might be. It could be over the phone, it could be online, it could be in person. It could be internally within a company. It could be from the boardroom. It could be at the front line. It could be B2B. It could be B2C. But service is taking action to create value. Now, when I first wrote the definition, I said to create value for someone else. Now, if it was action to create value for yourself, that would be the exception that proves the rule, and that would be called self-service. But then COVID came along, and I realized, the kind of service that really matters, at least to me, it's not just for someone else. It would be for someone you care about. And that opened up a big question, which is not just what is service, but what is actually care? Now, we can get to that in a moment. But let me show you and your listeners how this world of customer service itself has been evolving and why the issue of care is important for us to be looking at now and in the future. When I was young, the service center was basically the repair center. They had the spare parts. It's where you went when something broke, take it to the service center. Then the field evolved and customer service became equated with customer satisfaction. And during that era, the belief was that a satisfied customer would be a loyal customer. Well, today we know that's definitely not true because there's too many ways that somebody could be satisfied and you could switch even if you are satisfied. So customer satisfaction became customer delight. Surprise the customer, personal touch, moments of magic. And then that became customer experience, where we're said, wait a minute, it's not just a moment of delight, it's the whole experience. That evolved further, where the objective was customer loyalty. And that was the Net Promoter Score era, and make sure they come back and they buy more. And then it became customer advocacy, where you wanted somebody to be an ambassador and promote you on social media. And now we're evolving to what I would call authentic customer care. So what is care? It's a concern and a commitment to someone's well-being. How do you take good care? Well, you take action that will provide value that contributes to their well-being. So now you can see the connection between service and care. And we're now emerging into the era where authentic care for the well-being of your colleagues, of your customers, of your communities, and of the future, that is going to be the differentiation for future success.
It makes totally sense. And I think, as you were saying, COVID helped us, because before COVID, if I would say, I care about you, the people said, are you sure? What do you want from me? And nowadays it's completely different. And I think it's a cultural aspect that changed. And I think also there you are really renowned for explaining which are the pillars of a service culture. And I know that you did that for a big country like Singapore. In this case, I would like to reduce that only in businesses. How is it possible to create a service culture?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. You know that in the book, there's a fundamental architecture that has three major components. So imagine we're building a house. The foundation of the house is that you're going to need to teach the people in your organization about certain fundamental tools that can be used for continuous service improvement. And the reason you're going to have to teach it to them is it's not being taught in school. We have students who are graduating having passed a lot of tests, but they can't answer the question, what does it mean to have a customer? How do you create value for someone? How do you identify what different people value at different times? How do you produce a positive impression during a service transaction? So we need to bring people a tool set and then have them learn how to use it and develop a skill set so that they can apply those tools, whether it's to internal service or to external service. That's what I would call the foundation of the house. And I call that actionable service education. The roof of the house is having a leadership team that provide direction and protection for everyone that's going to work inside that organization. Everybody who comes to work inside the house every day, standing on the foundation of their educational experience and their ability to serve well. So that leadership team has got to guide, they've got to role model, they've got to support, they've got to engage, they've got to measure, they've got to, etc., etc. How many leaks do you need in a roof of a house to mess up the house?
Not so many. Exactly.
It doesn't even have to be a big leak. And so the second most critical component for building a strong service culture is make sure your leadership team is aligned and engaged and committed. Now, in between the foundation and the roof are these building blocks. In a real house, building blocks are things like cement, steel, wood, tile, pipes, windows, and wires. But it's the way you put them together that actually creates a house or an office or a restaurant or a hotel or a hospital. So in an organization, those building blocks, and there are 12 of them, and for those who are listening, if you go to the book Uplifting Service, you can find the 12 chapters, one about each building block. And there are things like, are you recruiting the right people? Is the onboarding experience of the new people one that actually introduces them to the culture and harnesses them right away in a way where they help to make your culture stronger because they are, if you will, fresh blood? Too many organizations bring people in and say, well, why don't you just work here for 6 months and figure out how things work and, then we'll get you involved. That's not a good approach. So that's two of the building blocks, but there are many more. Communications, recognition, voice of customer, measures and metrics, improvement process, service recovery, benchmarking service, and others. So those are the three major components: a foundation, leadership, building blocks. And then you need to have an implementation roadmap because you cannot do everything all at once. And those roadmaps must be designed in a customized manner, taking into account the situation for any complex organization so that we can help them do an assessment of where to start, what should you hold off on, and what can you leave for later.
Thank you very much. It's really outstanding remembering what was in the book and getting your explanation how you're explaining that with your eyes, with your hands. It's really extremely interesting. I would have now 150 questions. I think we cannot go through all of them, and therefore focusing on the most important, and also to create tangible explanation for the audience and perhaps also for your future clients is, I think, from my point of view, often people mix up excellent service with service culture. And what's your view on that? How can we explain that? How can we bring this understanding of these pillars and everything what you said to the boardrooms or to the boss of customer experience or
very
centers?
Good. Very good. So excellent service is an assessment. It's an opinion that someone has. I got excellent service, or we gave excellent service, and we know we did because we got a compliment or we got a 5-star review or a repeat purchase, for example. So excellent service is the experience. It's the actions that you take that produce the experience for someone where they say, You gave me an excellent experience. You gave me excellent service. And when you teach people how to do that, you give them the tools and the time, etc., and the support, they can provide excellent service. But a service culture is an entire organizational environment that is constantly educating, recognizing, communicating to, enabling, promoting, empowering, reinforcing, rewarding people to give excellent service to other people, internally to each other, as well as externally to customers or to clients or whatever they may be called. So these are not the same thing. Now let me show you why they're different and how they're connected. Is it possible to have someone in an organization who is a service hero, a superstar? They give excellent service, even if the culture of the organization is not an excellent service culture. Is that possible? Yes, it is. But is it sustainable? No, not really. Why? Because that superstar is either going to realize, hey, nobody else around here is doing this, and they're going to go somewhere else, or they're going to burn out, or they're just going to continue to be the one hero superstar. If you want to do it in a sustainable manner, then you've got to create the cultural environment that develops people and attracts new people who either are superstars or want to be superstars, and then it gives them all the support that they need, where they live with a sense of pride and enthusiasm, and the passion for continuous improvement is something that they share. That's a service culture that delivers excellent service performance.
Thank you very much. It's really great explanation. And also linking on that, I think there are also different views on service, because from the inside, let's say employees are executing processes and they are doing one after the other based on scripts or information that they get. But as a customer, as you said, all the different customers perceive in a different way the experience that they are facing. And therefore also, could you please elaborate a bit on this difference between service process and service perceptions? Because
yes,
within a company, you have clear KPIs, you need to do that quick, blah, blah, pam, 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 but the perception of the customer is different.
Exactly. So the fundamental distinction is the service process is everything you do. The service perception is everything that they experience, everything that they notice, everything that they like or don't like. And they're not exactly the same. Now, for sure, the service process influences the service perception. But there are times when you can improve the service perception, and it's not something that has to do with the process. Let me give you an example. You could have a bank that has a certain KPI. And let's say the internal service process for approving a large loan. Let's say someone wants to buy a house, or they want an equity line of credit, or whatever it may be. And you say, okay, our internal KPI is that we will get back to that person within 7 days, 10 days, 14 days of when we have received all of the documents. Well, if you're the person who submits all the documents and 4, 5, 6, 7 days have gone by and you've heard nothing from the bank, are you sitting here going, gee, I feel great about this loan application? No, you're sitting there wondering what's happening. So what would make more sense is for the bank to say, from the moment we get all of the documents, number one, we're going to send them a confirmation to let them know every one of the documents has been received. We're now going into this period of, let's say, 7 to 10 days. At 3 or 4 days in, it might be very appropriate to send another message. It could even be automatic that says, hi, we're touching base to let you know that the review of your loan application is in process, and so far everything's going smoothly. As promised, you'll be hearing from us within the 7 to 10 day period. Now, that didn't change anything about the status of the application. But the fact that you added that additional moment of communication, how does that feel to the customer who made the application? They're not sitting there wondering. They're going, oh, they're on it. They've got it. These guys are great. And then you know what? When you actually do respond to the application, let's say within 7 or 10 days, What a perfect situation. By the way, if your KPI was 7 days, I would tell them 7 to 10 days, so that on the 7th day, you're able to say, we promised you 7 to 10. Here we are on the first of those 3 days, and we've got an answer for your application. Were you able to follow that one, Gregorio?
Yes, it totally makes sense. And at the end, this, as you mentioned, it could be also an automatic information, but the customer perceptions is it's personalized because it's related to the case.
Exactly.
It takes care about me and it's proactive. I am not asking and calling where is my loan, but I get proactive and information that the company is caring about me.
Now let's go to a B2B situation where it's not just a loan application, like it may be a much larger, more complex, or more expensive purchase between a vendor, a supplier, and an end customer situation. And you could even have multiple points of contact between these two organizations. And if you ask from the customer side, some of those people might very much appreciate being updated each step along the way. Other people might appreciate not being bothered unless something is going to be late. And then there may be other people who say, well, I just want to know at certain key milestones. Let's agree what those milestones are. So if you're the company that's serving this large B2B client, you cannot just show up with your process and say, this is how we're going to keep you informed, and expect on the client side for them to say that that was excellent service. It might be adequate service. It might be an expected level of service because you have your standards and your process and your own KPIs. But if you don't ask the customer, how would you like to be informed? Then you're just going to be executing your process without being fully aware of how to create an excellent service perception.
It totally makes sense. And I think even more in B2B is this important, because for these big contracts that get renewed each 5 years or each 10 years, it's extremely important to work throughout the journey of the relationship and not only coming 2 days before the contract renewal, please sign here, we continue working together. And therefore It totally makes sense, and it's extremely important. And yes, please.
And if it's 3 to 5 years in between each repurchase or renewal, the person that was on the client side last time may not be the same person.
Exactly.
Right. So let us not assume, let us inquire.
And in the meantime, perhaps they have a new CEO, and the new CEO knows people in other companies and all this stuff that we know. But coming back to our discussion, you mentioned that it's important also to measure the quality of service. And based on all the explanation that you gave to me, I cannot think that Net Promoter Score, even if it's a great KPI, could really fit in your definition of measurement of the quality of service. What's your view? How is possible to measure the service?
Yeah, there are many ways that you can measure service. So the answer I'm going to give you is not the do-all, be-all, and end-all of service measurement. But I want to say something that's more relevant to this issue of care, because care is concern for and commitment to well-being. And being is a verb, so it's a future-oriented focus. If I say that I'm genuinely committed to someone's well-being, then I want to take action now that contributes to their future. In the world of customer service, there's two words there. One is service, that's the service provider. But the other one is customer. And we're reaching an era where I believe that customers can also step up to be concerned for and committed to the well-being of their service providers. In other words, it's not just where do I get the best deal and how do I make the most money and what am I gonna, and you don't care about the future well-being of those who are serving you. In the world that we're going forward into, we need a stronger sense of partnership between those who are serving and those who are being served. A good example of that right now is anyone who's listening who may be involved in government service or civil service. and you realize that they're serving the population, the citizens, the visitors, the employers, the labor force, the elderly, the students in schools. This is all government service. Well, who's the customer? The population. But should the population also be treating everyone who's in government service like a partner? Like, what can I do to demonstrate my concern and commitment to their future well-being? Not just take them for granted. Not just say, well, hey, I paid my taxes, you have to now make me happy. No, we are in a social commitment to and concern for one another. And that would actually then be a service partnership. Now, how do you measure that? And that would be asking questions like, what is the likelihood that you would like to continue to work with me in the future, or that you trust me to be someone to work with you and be an advisor for you or a supplier to you? When you're thinking about going into new areas, to what extent would you want to be in conversation with me about that possibility before you've even made the decision? Because you're designing your future. Do you think of me that way, as someone to be in conversation with? Or am I just a low-priced vendor that you should squeeze to try to get the most that you can out of that transaction?
Thank you very much. It's make totally sense that it's really thinking about long-term partnership, giving and getting something, and not only focused on specific, I need to create this and that. Thank you very much. I think what I am learning, or what we learned from your book, but also from this discussion, is that service is a mindset. It's not only a process or a roadmap to implement, but it's even bigger. And I think that you often also speaks about the future, and therefore I would like to understand from you, how do you see the future development of service? And basically, as I already mentioned, we saw on your webpage, service, care, and love. You spoke a lot about service. You are speaking now these days, these months, about care, and I think the next step could be love. But how is it possible to achieve that and to get to that?
Yeah. Gregorio, first, let me say that this topic and issue of love, I by no means profess to be someone who's prepared to be an educator in that space. All right. I recognize that what underlies the desire to serve someone is care of some sort. And I can identify that what underlies this human, biological, mammalian, historical urge to care about something, it has to do with a phenomenon of love, but I don't propose myself as an educator of that. So allow me to pen that either for a few decades, and we can talk again, or until you think you're ready to teach me something, and then I'll be happy to learn. In the meantime, let me talk to this issue of service as a mindset. There's a lovely gentleman named Doug who's president of a company that I did some work for, and he had one of the best definitions of customer I ever heard. He said, a customer is anyone who's not me. Now, when you take that position, that a customer in life, in the world, is anyone who's not me, then every other person in the world is somebody potentially that I could think about in terms of what can I do for them that would uplift their life, that would create more value, that would make them feel recognized or appreciated or encouraged or admired or just seen. That's, service as a mindset is, what can I do for you? Not what's in it for me. Now, again, I'm not asking people to just be completely altruistic for no reason, because the joy of serving is the incredible gift that you get when you give. So if you orient yourself towards giving to others, what comes back to you is so much more authentic than what you go out and try to get for yourself. When you ask about the future of service, I think what's happening right now on the planet, where we've got the kind of ecological tremendous difficulties and challenges that we're going to face as a species, and COVID was just sort of the opening show to have people become aware of this, is just how fragile we are, just how dependent on one another we are, and just how fluid our experience of life can actually be. Therefore, what is it you're going to do, not just with the rest of your life, but with the next moment in your life? that will take good care of yourself by taking good care of you and other people.
And as you're saying, of the environment.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was really a great discussion, and now we are coming to the last part of this CX Goalkeeper show. I have 3 questions for you, and these are questions that also would help the listener to understand you better and to also to get the opportunity to talk with you. The first question is there a book that you are saying it's something that I would like to suggest to the audience because it helped me during my career?
Well, you mentioned my book because it was helpful in terms of career. With your permission, could I answer the question with a book recommendation that I think will be good for someone's life?
Even better.
Okay. So the book I want to recommend, and I read about one book every week. I go for long walks every day, and I use Audible to listen to books, and I do it, almost at twice the speed. And when I'm walking, I'm with the trees and the birds and the book. And there's a particular book that was recommended to me by one of my mentors, Dr. Fernando Flores, and the book is called The Invention of Yesterday. Now, Yuval Noah Harari wrote the book Sapiens, which many people have heard about. It's been translated into many languages, and it's an outstanding book, and I sincerely recommend it. And that was really the ecological, biological evolution of Homo sapiens. But this book, called The Invention of Yesterday, was written by Tamim Ansari, and it took him 7 years. It's a history of the world, and it was how the cultures and the traditions and the habits and the styles and the languages and the practices that have evolved around the world, how did they evolve and move and come into each other and blend and mesh and become, and in reading that book, I was actually able to locate the life that I'm living, which is quite an international life. I live in Singapore. I've been traveling a lot, of course, my life. I'm not in even the side of the world I was born in. But for anyone, anywhere, to locate yourself as a human being who's alive in the world today, how'd you get here? And I'm not asking the biological question, which the book Sapiens answers. I'm asking the cultural question, which the book, The Invention of Yesterday, answers beautifully.
Thank you very much. I think that's something where we all can profit from. The next question is the usual one, but I think it's important also to ask that if somebody would like to contact you, what's the best way?
There are 3 different ways. One is to go to my website, which is ronkaufman.com. And I know you're in Europe where Kaufman is with 2 Fs, but I think one of the Fs got left off when the ancestors moved to the United States. So it's RONKAUFMAN.com. The second is you can find me on LinkedIn. There's a very active channel there with social media postings just about every day. And the third is that you can just go to YouTube and type in my name, Ron Kaufman. And if you add the word service, you're going to find me. By the way, if you put the word Ron Kaufman and the word trash, like garbage, trash, you'll see a really interesting video about one of my hobbies, which is that when I'm out in the morning walking and I'm listening to those audiobooks, I also carry with me plastic bags and a trash picker-upper, and I clean up the neighborhoods that I walk in.
And if I remember well, not only in outside, but also in the ocean, are you doing that?
That's true. My wife and I are scuba divers, a couple thousand dives apiece. And one of the things when we go diving, we carry with us mesh bags. And as we come up out of the dive, we literally, the first thing we do is hand up onto the boat these bags that are filled with fishing lines and T-shirts and plastic bags and, anything that should not be down there. We're the hunters. We just love to clean it up.
I think that's great. And it shows your passion for what we are doing and that you're really doing what you are also saying. The last question for you, I named it the Golden Nugget. It's something that we discussed or something new that you would like to leave to the audience.
Well, actually, there are 2 phrases, one of which you reminded me of today in this interview, which is education for the well-being of humanity. And thank you very much, because I've been working with some people on what might be the subtitle of my next book. And you reminded me that I wrote that, and I hadn't thought about it for a while. So thank you, Gregorio. But the other, and people will find this on my website, it's a phrase that I said at some point, and I just want to end with this because it really does make sense. A life well lived contributes to the well-being of others. A life well lived doesn't result in you being the richest person in the graveyard. It doesn't result in you being the most famous person who's ever lived. A life well lived is one where other people are glad that you lived or glad that you're alive right now. And so to live one's life that way gives this sense of fulfillment, purpose, meaning, satisfaction. And let's be candid, we're all going to age. We're all going to become elders. There will come a point where all of us pass. And I've heard the joke says nobody's on their deathbed saying, gosh, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. But I can see people saying, I wish I had. And it's not so much the bucket list of having climbed Mount Everest. Maybe it's, I wish I'd been a bit kinder. I wish I'd been a bit more generous. I wish I'd been more helpful. I wish I'd reached out and had that difficult conversation that would have helped to heal something or forgive something or respect something rather than just let it drift and pass on without it being resolved. A life well lived contributes to the well-being of others.
Thank you very much, Ron. It was really an outstanding discussion. And the only thing that I can say is really thank you very much. I hope that we stick to the spirit of the game, that we were responsible together for the quality of this discussion. For me, it's overachieved because it was really an outstanding discussion. And I hope also that the audience enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Thank you very much, Ron.
Gregorio, thank you very much for being the host of this channel and for today's interview. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Grazie mille, arrivederci. It was a big pleasure.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share the word of mouth, subscribe it, share it. Until the next episode, please don't forget, we are not in a B2B or B2C business, we are in a human-to-human environment. Thank you!